It's time for a Big Blue Kickoff Live.
Nobody can ever tell you that you couldn't do it, because you did.
On Giants.com.
You know what I saw? New York Giant Prime.
And the Giants mobile app.
17-14 is the final. One touchdown, we are world champions. Believe it, and it will happen.
Part of the Giants Podcast Network.
Let's go out there like a bunch of crazy dogs. Have some fun.
Hello again, everybody, and welcome to Friday's edition of Big Blue Kickoff Live, the official, presented by Cadillac. I jumped the script. Cadillac, the official luxury vehicle of the New York Football Giants. So glad you could be with us for the next hour to talk Giants football. Dottino and Matt Citak, 201-939-4513, or on Twitter at hashtag Giants Chat. And as a reminder, if you don't catch this show live, you can always catch the archive and our entire podcast network on the Giants mobile app, podcast platforms everywhere, and at giants.com/podcast. All right, look, folks, if you've been on Twitter over the last hour, you know some of the news that the Giants have released with their injuries. It is not really great news, to be perfectly frank. But then again, typical of this season, right, Matt?
Yep.
It's just not been a wonderfully happy, joyous, thrilling season. It has been a season full of potholes and detour signs and bridges that were washed out. It's just been that way. So why should it be any different as we go into the final month or so of the regular season? Malik Neighbors apparently came down with a hip pointer at some point yesterday during practice. Coach Brian Dable saying it was during one-on-ones, and he was examined this morning. They're not ruling him out yet for the Saints game, but he is not going to practice today. And obviously, at this stage of the game, he is one of the very few A-lister players that people are really excited to watch because he's going for a bunch of rookie records in terms of receiving charts. Just don't know exactly what it looks like for him. Hopefully we'll know more this afternoon, but, you know, when it rains, it pours, right, Matt?
Yeah, it really does. I mean, Coach Dable said before that, so when Coach Dable spoke to the media, which was about an hour ago, he said he had just 5 minutes prior to that met with the medical staff, Ronnie Barnes, who told him that Malik just came back from getting an MRI done. And all Coach Dable knew at that time was that it was a hip flexor injury. He wasn't going to practice today. The medical staff did not say that, Malik had to be ruled out for Sunday today. So, I mean, as you just mentioned, Coach said, we don't know yet. He could play, he could not play. It's too early to tell which way it's going to go at this point. And you mentioned not only is he, one of the biggest things that people want to see and root for now, for sure. But not only that, he's the best player on offense that the Giants have, the best playmaker. So this offense that has already struggled all season, even when he's been on the field, you take him out, and that it could be even more of a struggle to get down the field and get points on the board. So hopefully he's able to suit up on Sunday. He was not the only Giant that had, I guess, somewhat not encouraging or discouraging injury news, because Coach also said that for the third consecutive day, Deonte Banks, Bobby Okereke, and Rakeem Nunez-Roches all are not practicing. So they have not taken the practice field at all this week. Now, Coach Dable said that does not necessarily mean that they're not going to play. He would not rule any of them out. He kind of said, we'll see.
We'll see. That was his quote.
We'll see. For just about anyone that's been on the injury report.
I think he stole that copyrighted phrase from Tom Coughlin. We'll see.
So we got a we'll see about Malik Neighbors, Bobby Okereke, Deonte Banks, Nacho, and in addition to those four, Jermaine Illuminor and Evan Neal. Now, those two at least got back on the practice field yesterday. Limited. And Coach said that they would be limited again today.
Mm-hmm.
As we know, on these injury reports, limited could mean, they take one snap in the team reps. It could mean that they take every snap but one during the team reps.
I will say this, okay? Carmen Brasillo, the offensive line coach, when he had his session today, he was asked about Neal, and he was talking about him making his fourth start, which means in my mind that he's thinking he's a go. He's optimistic and he's hopeful and he's thinking of it in that term. So unless he is told, no, he's operating under the assumption that the player will go. And I think it's important for Evan Neal, quite frankly, to get as many snaps in as possible. He had the worst of his 3 games so far against Dallas. I thought the previous 2 games, he really did fine. The game against Dallas, he was a little bit more leaky. Against Micah Parsons on a number of snaps, that's going to happen when you go up against all pros. But I certainly think that this 3-game body of work that Neal's put on the field so far has been a significant step forward. And as long as he can stay in the lineup, for goodness sakes, man, injuries have befuddled him now for how many years? If he could just stay in the lineup and play, he can only help himself, Matt.
Yeah, so on Tuesday's show, John and I talked about the things we're most looking forward to seeing or want to see in these last 5 games. And one of the things we discussed was Evan Neal, because he's, especially this past, 12 months, he just hasn't been on the field much at all. I mean, he got hurt last year and missed the last, 6 games of the season, something like that.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until the game in Munich that he got on the field this year. So he's only played 3 games in the last, year. So, yeah, these last 5 games, very important to see what he can potentially do and what he can contribute to this team moving forward, because obviously as soon as this offseason, the front office starts to have some, significant decisions to make on 5th-year options for him, for Kayvon. So, yeah, I mean, hopefully he's able to get back on the field for Sunday's game. And, even if he misses Sunday, it would be great if he could get back next week and finish the season out, the last 4 games, just to, have more of a sample size of what he can do, because this is his 3rd year. And I agree with you. He has looked better in the 3 games that he's played this season. But, I mean, in comparison to the last 2 years, it was hard to go the other way, because he really struggled his first 2 seasons.
And this is still only a small sample size. We really could use the next 5 games.
Yeah, very much so. So hopefully he's able to get back on the field this Sunday. Same with Jermaine Illuminor, because right now, given Andrew Thomas is done for the season, Jermaine Illuminor is this team's best offensive tackle. So it would obviously be very beneficial to have him out there, but we don't know what his status is. Limited yesterday, limited again today, so we'll see. And all of this comes in addition to Monday's injury news with Dexter Lawrence and Theo Johnson being placed on injured reserve and both of their seasons most likely being over. So it's been a rough injury week.
Final thought from talking to the assistant coaches earlier today. There was only one other item that I think I would like to share with you folks, because I think there is some relevance to it. Andre Patterson, the Giants' defensive line coach, who's been at this, over 30 years, I believe. So well respected. And what a great guy, by the way. He was talking today when the media approached him and said, hey, Nacho, Dexter, DJ Davidson is hurt. Riley is a bit gimpy. He's been limited to practice this week. And they're basically laughing with him, you got toothpicks, basically. What do you got? And he was very serious when he said, you know what? That's why from the beginning of camp, when these guys get here, I spend time with everybody in the defensive line room, including the practice squad players. And I will spend extra time with the practice squad players even afterwards, trying to coach them up, because the last thing in the world that he wants is for one of those guys to have to be forced into the lineup and not be prepared. He was animate about, this is why I spend all of the extra time with the Casey Rogerses of the world and those types of guys who, you know what? Under normal circumstances, they may never see a snap the whole season. These guys who are buried deep on the depth chart, there's a realistic chance they have no idea if they're ever even going to be active on a Sunday, never mind getting to a game. They don't know the answer to that. But Coach Patterson emphatically described how this is the time that those guys need to be called upon, and they'd better be prepared and they'd better be ready. Now, how well they'll play, he's like, you can't replace Dexter Lawrence. Okay, we're not going to expect that from these guys. But I need to know that I got them ready so that when they go out there, they know what they're doing and they have a chance to go out there and compete and put their best foot forward, because this is an opportunity for them to grow as players and to show what they've got. Look, folks, I know to a lot of you it doesn't mean a hill of beans, but as someone like myself who loves the game, loves the details, the idiosyncrasies, the mentality of the game, Coach Patterson is so old school. I love this guy. I joke with a lot of people sometimes, a lot of times even customer service reps where they really take good care of you. And I'll say, hey, you're from OSU. That's old school university. And when you got a degree from old school university, big thumbs up to you. And he's one of those guys. I love that guy.
Yeah, he's great. And, he's also just one of the best, defensive line coaches probably in the entire NFL. I mean,
sure is.
Dexter Lawrence has spoken many times about how, obviously, the work that Dexter put in, he deserves almost all of the credit for the growth and the development we've seen these last couple of seasons from Dexter Lawrence. But Dexter's be the first one to tell you that he probably wouldn't be where he is today without the help of Andre Patterson.
Yep.
He's played a huge role in helping Dexter Lawrence become the player, this all-pro player that he is now. He is a great defensive line coach. And, yeah, this week especially, his group in particular might get put to the test, because we spoke about all those injuries and we barely mentioned even that DJ Davidson and Jordan Riley are also both banged up and have been limited in practice throughout the week and are not guaranteed to suit up on Sunday. So, Coach Dable brought this up in his press conference that the Giants could be looking at guys like, they expect Elijah Chapman to get a lot more opportunity. I mean, especially the last, I would say, 2 months, he's really only been used in passing situations. But both Coach Dable and Shane Bowen said this week he's going to be on the field more than just passing situations. He's probably going to be on the field in early downs now. He's going to get a lot more opportunity given the injuries. And they brought up guys, like Casey Rogers, Elijah Garcia on the practice squad, Corey Durden, who just got signed from the Rams practice squad. These guys are going to get opportunities this week.
There's a game to be played.
Yeah.
Somebody's got to take those reps.
Yes, 100%. And, you were talking about Andre Patterson and his work with some of those, unheralded guys in the defensive line room. Well, Coach Dable brought up another assistant coach who really has had an impact in helping those guys, and Brian Cox.
No doubt.
He mentioned Brian Cox and James Ferentz.
Didn't mean to leave you out, Brian. No disrespect.
The assistant, defensive line, and then James Ferentz, assistant offensive line coach. Coach Dable said how those coaches really have a big impact and spend a lot of time with these younger guys, the guys on the practice squad, to help them, stay ready just in case their number is called. Because as we see every single year, injuries happen, and guys that, were towards the bottom of the roster or on the practice squad get thrust into bigger roles. And those assistant coaches really help get those guys ready for their opportunity. So the defensive line is certainly going to be put to the test with this week's game. It's a big challenge against the Saints in their rushing attack.
Alvin Kamara.
You know that the Saints want to run the ball. They want to run
early
and often. They rank inside the top 10 in just about every rushing metric.
They have
It's going to be a big test.
Their top two receivers and Taysom Hill are all out. They don't have a choice.
Even before Taysom Hill was lost for the season, they were running the ball all
no
the time.
question, but now even more so.
Yes, 100%.
Kamara's going to have one long day for sure. He's going to have the ball a ton. Before we get to our first phone call, just a reminder, the Giants Huddle podcast is a new one up, Pearson, this week. What do we got?
We got Tyler Newbin, Coach Dable, and John DeShazier, who covers the Saints for Saints.com.
All right, very cool. So that's up there. Giants Huddle podcast always has long-form interviews, again, Giants and NFL dignitaries and personnel. Find it on your favorite podcast platforms or go to giants.com/podcasts. And don't forget, if you're on Apple Podcasts, always leave a positive review so we know to keep going with the program. Giants tickets, well, season ticket memberships, it's kind of late to get those. You could still get them if you like. single tickets as well. And if you get a season ticket membership, even if it's only a partial, you still get the year-round benefits that come with a season ticket membership. Don't forget, you can visit Giants.com/tickets. Limited inventory is available. And also the Giants TV app, the streaming app. It's free. It's available on Apple TV, Roku, and Amazon Fire TV. It is there with all the highlights and all the different stuff that you can get, interviews and so forth and so on your device. So that takes care of all the promos. So now we can get to line one. And Jay is in Hawaii. And Jay, we're very jealous of you today because it is 33 degrees in North Jersey, which isn't that terrible for December. But the wind is wicked. I mean, it cuts through you like I can't even begin to describe. It's nasty out there today.
I think the feels like temperature is like 20 degrees. It's
so
freezing.
Jay, bring us some sunshine. What do you got for us?
Hey, how you doing, team? I do not miss that win, Paulie. I used to live in Brooklyn. Getting on a train, and then I moved to Staten Island for a little bit. So driving, not driving, but taking the bus to the ferry. Yeah, that was rough. So I don't miss that. But it's a nice 80 degrees this morning. I want to rub that in.
All right. Hey, no. I can feel it from the phone. I can feel it. I can feel the heat coming from the phone. Thank you so much.
Quick question. I'll kind of lead into it a little bit. So I don't know how much of the you guys have paid attention to Giants fans in like social media, Facebook, message board. But for the last 6 years, we've been pretty fractured as a fan base. You have like one or two groups and kind of like taking sides. And it's been pretty bad from my perspective. I guess my question to you is there's a lot of blaming being pointed around on, Schoen did this or Daboll did this or Mara did this. I don't want to get you guys fired, but I don't know if you can answer this question. How much input was there in the Jones signing, like the extension signing, not the terms of the contract, but the extension itself? How much of an input was there from John Mara, Schoen, Daboll? And the reason why I ask this is because if it was, in a sense, Mara that kind of helped coerce that decision, I think fans would appreciate him a lot if he would, in like a press conference at the end of the season, just kind of own it, and say, hey, yeah, I put that on those guys, or that Jones did a lot for us in the playoffs, and he looked pretty good, and we thought that he would something that we can build upon, and that's why we did that. I'll take the answer off the line. I appreciate you guys. Thank you.
All right. Enjoy the surf, Jay.
Thanks, Jay.
All right. I'm going to answer your question as honestly as I always can because I don't hide anything here. I don't know what percentage ownership, the GM, and the head coach put into that decision. I don't know the percentage. So I'm going to be right out front with you. I don't know that percentage. What I do know is this. The head coach and the general manager are very much in unison. They came from Buffalo together, and they are very much in agreement on the kinds of players they want, the way that they would like to build this football team, and the communication between those two is simpatico. And I know that they both also have told us, we're not in their offices, but they talk to ownership every day. So you can assume that that is a simpatico relationship as well. We also know that the general manager here makes the final call on personnel decisions. But when you're talking about large sums of money, when you have an extension that is mega millions, you obviously need to go to ownership and say, hey, look, this is what we're thinking. This is why I need you to sign off on this amount and this bonus because this is upfront money. Okay, and you have to understand the implications of the cash flow and what's on the cap. So obviously, there does have to be something kicked upstairs to understand the decision. And the only thing that I can say about John Mara is that he made it very clear, and you know the quote that I'm going to refer to when he told the media a couple years back the Giants had done everything they can to wreck, basically, I'm paraphrasing, Daniel Jones before they had signed that extension. So, you could certainly ascertain from that, after what Jones did to get the Giants to the playoffs and had a really strong season in 2022, you can only imagine that he was certainly in favor of bringing Daniel Jones back and extending him. To what degree was that part of the equation? I do not know. I won't pretend to know. I was not upstairs in those offices, and it's not my business to be upstairs in those offices. I've now given you the most honest, complete answer that I have at my disposal. Unless you have something else to add, Matt, I don't know that there's anything else to say.
No, look, I think you nailed it right on the head. We don't know. We are not privy to those conversations.
We're not part of the personnel department.
As much as I would love to know, be a part of those conversations for my own just personal interest, we have no idea.
Then you wouldn't be doing a show.
No, definitely not.
I'll tell you that.
I guess the only thing I can add is that in my personal opinion, I feel like everyone was probably on the same page and wanting to bring Daniel back after the season that he had in 2022, after the run that the Giants made, winning the first playoff game in over a decade.
I mean, that's all the evidence that we have that indicates that.
Yeah, I mean, look, I feel like kind of common sense to think like everyone was most likely on board with bringing him back. Maybe the actual details of the contract, maybe not everyone was a part of. I mean, I don't know of how much Coach Dable is partaking in contract negotiations. Probably not at all. But
no, I can't imagine that part he was involved
in. But
I
don't think that Daniel would have been brought back unless Coach Dable said, like, yeah, I think I can, win with this guy. I mean, that's my personal opinion, but sort of just common sense that all parties probably were on the same page and wanting to bring him back.
The tenor that he, the GM, and the ownership have, the tenor of their relationship as we understand it, and it seems that it's been this way ever since they all got here in the building together, is one of complete cooperation.
Yep.
So I think it's logical to assume under those circumstances, if any one of the three factions, the coach, the GM, or the ownership, was against or slamming their fist on the table and saying, no, I don't think this is a very good idea, chances are, I would just say, logically speaking, they may not have moved forward with it. It just seems that way.
I have to agree with you.
But
again, we don't know for sure.
That's an assumption based on the evidence and the logic that we have before us. Jay, I don't know if that helps you a whole lot, but like I tell people all the time, don't just go to the media and believe everything that they throw up on the wall because they like to pretend that they know a heck of a lot more than they do. Here on this program, we're going to tell you, honestly, what we know, and if we can't tell you because it's something that is classified, because there are classified things in the building, we'll tell you. We can't address that. And that's the only answer I really have for you. Because I think it's important, and I think, Matt, you feel the same. Speak if you don't. I think John feels the same too. There's no point in us either hypothesizing on something or making believe that we know something that we don't. Because to speak out of turn it's not doing anybody a service. In fact, it's a mega disservice to all involved, to us, to the organization, and to the fans. I'd much rather tell you, simply put, that's something that I truly don't have first knowledge of and I don't know.
Yeah, I agree. And the only other thing I will say is just what, Jay said fans would love to hear, but no NFL owner is going in front of the media and saying, yeah, I forced this player on my GM when it doesn't work out. Like that, it just does not happen. Period.
There are some owners, though, who were very out in front when they signed certain free agents, and then you didn't hear from GMs or coaches because the owner needed to be the face of the signing. And you know the kinds of guys I'm talking about.
Yep. Yeah, no, I do.
So that does happen.
Yeah, but
that does not happen here, though.
One of the guys in particular I feel like you might be referencing is also his team's general manager, so it's a little bit different.
It kind of is.
But
yes.
Just for, what he said fans would love to hear. Like that's just never going to happen for any team across the NFL or across any professional sport.
Yeah, if
that's a benefit of owning the team. You don't have to do stuff like that.
Yeah, but in that one particular case, the owner is very happy to get out in front and say that he did this and he did that.
It is very different if you're the owner and your team's general manager. That's a whole other ballpark. We don't have to go down
back to the phones at 201-939-4513. Mike in Virginia is next on the show. Hello.
Hey, fellas. How y'all doing today?
Okay, how are you?
How are you?
Good. There's a couple things I wanted to talk about if I got a minute to. One was I personally think that we have been misusing players. A lot of stuff goes with scheme, in my opinion. Like the past 2 years, our defense has been a man-based kind of defense. And we get a coach that runs more zone than man. And we wonder why we're in the position we're in pass coverage. When we've had, in our pass coverage the past 2 years, we've been very successful. Our run defense, I understand the run defense needs to be tweaked. But I don't think we should have just switched straight to zone when we've been running man and having a lot of success with it. We got rid of Big Cat, who's thriving in another area that would have helped out Dexter. We got rid of, and I understand McKinney went for the money. We got rid of Love, who's being successful somewhere else. I personally think, statistically wise, going to the offense, if we would have built this team correctly around Saquon and allowed Jones to be a play-action quarterback and use him with mobility, I think we would have been a whole lot better, similar to what Tennessee did with Derrick Henry. They knew that they were going to run the ball, but stop it. They had a lot of success. And I just think that we've been mismanaging and misusing players consistently, and it's come to a head, and we're seeing it with our play on the field. People not run fit correctly, people missing tackles. When you're going from man to zone, like Banks was drafted as a man corner, and he did pretty well last year under Wink system. And this year we see what's going on when we're forcing this young man to play zone where he's not successful. Isaiah Simmons, don't put him in coverage. It has been proven that he's not that good. Wink was the young man coming off the edge blitzing, very successful. So I just think that we're using and we're mismanaging people, but I also think that it comes from, I've been a coach since 2012, and I've coached all the way up to high school. Football is football. And I say that to say, when you're losing, us as coaches start to overthink stuff too. So for the people and the fans that are out there, and it's because we get into what can I do to get this better?
Mike, you are right about that. When things are going bad, guys work extra hard to try to fix them, and sometimes you can overthink it. I appreciate the call, and let's address your points because we do want to try to get to other people as well. I would say this. There are just a couple of things that I want to make sure that are accurate, and I'm not going to dispute your opinions because you're allowed to have those. But the things that you said that aren't quite accurate, the Giants did not shop Leonard Williams. In fact, Seattle called and asked about making a deal for him, and Joe Shane called up Leonard Williams, brought him up to the office and said, "Do you want to go?" Asked him if he wanted to be traded. And Leonard was like, "Well, what are you going to do?" Well, we're thinking of sending you to Seattle. They had a chance to be a playoff team, okay? And so a very unique situation. This does not happen very often. When a GM says to a player, somebody called for you, they'd like to make a deal for you, are you okay with it? Are you okay with going? So let's make that clear. The Giants were not looking to get rid of Leonard Williams. That's number one. Number two, Julian Love. They offered Julian Love a better contract than what he originally wound up taking, or lastly wound up taking from Seattle. They offered him the deal. They told him, here's the deal. He wanted to go shopping, or his agent did. Maybe it wasn't him. It could have been his agent. Went shopping around. By the time they got back to the Giants, They had already spent some of their free agent money elsewhere on other positions. And they had told him, here's your deal. If you come back to us later, we may not have the same amount of money available, so you're probably not going to get the same deal. Well, what happened? He comes back later on, and the Giants said, what did we tell you? That's the situation. And so he wound up taking the deal that Seattle offered him. So it was not like they got rid of Julian Love. They wanted Julian Love back. They offered him a good deal to come back, and his camp decided they wanted to get a little bit more money out of the coffers, and they took the gamble and the chance, and that's why he wound up on another team. So let's make those two things perfectly clear. The Giants did not off those two guys. Okay? As far as the other item that I want to kind of dispute in a way, unfortunately, when you have many holes to fill, especially on your offensive line, and you've got to spend a significant amount of money to bring in what they wound up with 3 new starters, Matt, on this offensive line. And, you had offered Barkley basically the deal he got from the Eagles a year and a half earlier, and he turned it down because he wanted more money. You can't say that the Giants offed Barkley. You can't say that because they offered him basically something extremely close to what he signed for with Philly a year and a half earlier, and he refused to take it twice at that time. So let's be very careful here before we go into these narratives. These are 3 players that the Giants had actually not tried to get rid of. All right? As far as the rest of your opinions, fine. I've got no problem. Everybody can have an opinion. And I do agree with you in that I think Banks is a better press man corner than he is his own corner. And I do think Isaiah Simmons, I'd love to see him on the field more. I do think he's got coverage skills, and I think he's a heck of a blitzer. And I've been a fan of his since he came out of Clemson, and I wish that he'd be a bigger part of this defense. I've now said my piece. Matt, if you have anything to add, please do. I just want to make sure that we clear up some of what you said to be was inaccurate.
Yeah, I'm just going to touch very quickly on each of those 2 things. First off, with, the players that have since left the Giants, I think given how the Giants season has been going and how a lot of these players are doing on their new teams, people are kind of creating like some revisionist history on how exactly these players departed.
Right.
And it's easy, to pile on the team that is 2-10 and towards the bottom of the NFL while these former players are going off. But I agree with what you said about there were efforts made to keep a lot of those guys, but the saying goes, it takes 2 to tango. And for, it's different circumstances for different players, but the offers were made, competitive, if not better offers than what these players got. And for whatever reason, they were not accepted. And now people are, a year plus later trying to go back and be like, oh, the Giants just let these guys walk. It's not what happened. And again, it's easy to pile on the team that's 2-10, but just let's not do revisionist history here.
They call that low-hanging fruit, right?
Yeah, that's one. And the second thing in terms of, players playing what the caller thought was out of position, all I will say is I like to believe that I know a lot about football. I will not even put myself in the same ballpark as in terms of football knowledge as the coaching staff. So if the coaching staff thinks that a certain player should be playing at a position or a certain style or whatever it is, I'm trusting their call because they have forgotten more about football in the last 24 hours than I will know in my entire life. I will happily admit that. So yeah, that's all I'm going to touch on with those 2 points. I feel like we've kind of discussed those 2 topics a lot over the last month or 2.
Banks,
and I get it. But
yeah, the thing about Banks is, he comes out of Maryland, and yes, he is a press man corner, no question. That's where his skill set lies. But he's making the jump to the NFL, so he's got a couple of adjustments to make. Number 1, he's got to adjust to the speed of the game. Number 2, he's got to adjust to the physicality of the game. Okay? Number 3, he's got to adjust to the playbooks, which are much more advanced and much more complex than they are at the college level. Okay? Then, it is true. he gets a different style defensive coordinator in his second season. So now as he's trying to enhance his growth and maturing processes, he also now has to come to grips with a new defensive scheme. It is absolutely fair to say he's going to have some struggles with that. That's just logical. So now, over the long term, will he be better off, going back to press man? Maybe he will be. Or maybe he'll wind up being such an accomplished corner in this league where he can play both very effectively. That could be too. As Jerome Henderson said today, he is so early in his career. There is still no question in Coach Henderson's mind that he's a CB1. And he's going to have a long career in this league. But there is still development to be had. And how he winds up playing the rest of his career is still to be determined. Jay, I don't know what else to tell you. That's about the most complete answer that we can give you. Jeff from Maine, you're next on the program. Hello.
Oh, hey, afternoon, gentlemen.
What's going on?
Hey, Jeff.
Great job as usual, in what, unfortunately, again, probably the toughest job in showbiz for you guys.
Hey, I'll tell you, I need Dr. Vinny Bupat, I get no respect. Rodney was such a blast. That's a guy who had the toughest job in show business.
Right. But, no, I've been a fan since like 81, and I've always supported the GM, coach, and quarterback because I think they're really hard jobs. And unless you've been a three-time Super Bowl winning GM, I don't really see how, you'd be able to criticize them. However, having said that, and I've always supported Daniel Jones, I even used to support, supported like Dave Brown and Danny Cannell back then. But even after Daniel Jones's last performance, I thought it was so egregious that he did have to go. I am 100% down with Joe Shane still. I've agreed with 100% of every move he's made. And I think someone that criticizes him now but didn't criticize it when he made it is being hypocritical. And but I do have some slight minor criticisms of Dable. I still like him, but the whole experiment with him calling the plays while also running the team, I think that there has been a bit of a lack of big picture oversight on the defense, which, I think could possibly be partly to blame on that. And then I have one particular specific thing on special teams I wanted to run by you. And I was hoping that the return game, there'd be some big plays in it so that it could help teams get back into the game, from the big play. And Eric Gray, I don't think, is the right person to have back there. And I think that's why opposing teams always kick it directly to him. I'd rather see either Singletary or even Turbo Miller back there because they have better big play potential. I don't see Eric Gray breaking, having the ability to, make a big play, and not to mention the fumbles. So those are my points. Appreciate it. Keep up the good work. And any comments, I'll take off the air.
Okay. Well, thank you for the phone call.
Thank you.
All right. Let's address these in reverse order. You were there with Coach Gabriel yesterday, right?
I was not out there.
You were not out there for that. Okay. He addressed Eric Gray because somebody asked him about the fumbles. He's had a little bit of trouble holding on to the ball on kickoff returns. He said the way they're dealing with this, they like him, by the way, on kickoff returns. And I want to give you a number because he's amongst the top 5 in the NFL in kickoff return leaders. Let me see if I can find this.
25.9 yards per return.
Yeah, he's in the top 5. I'm sure of it. In fact, I'm looking for it now. I'm going to find it. Here, kickoff returns. Here he is. Kickoff returns, NFL. Eric Gray is 4th in the NFL. 4th in the NFL in average kickoff return yardage. Okay? So let's just get that out there. He is amongst the best in the league in terms of his return yardage. Now, what probably disturbs you is that he hasn't busted a couple of 50s. Okay, because his long is only 36, but his average is over 25. So that means he's consistently given you solid kickoff returns, but he hasn't had any busts for 70 to make you guys really salivate. So that's why you have a warped sense of maybe how good he is at returns, because he hasn't given you the spectacular ones that show up on the highlights. That's number one. Number two, Coach Gabriel said he does a lot of things that they like on kickoff return. He's got good vision. He's tough. He runs with some intent through guys, not afraid of contact. They like a lot of his elements. But he said there's no question that ball security has been a blip. So he said what we're trying to do in practice is replicate the plays under which he fumbled so that we can work on those plays in practice and get him to muscle memory holding on to the ball under those particular styles of plays. So they've addressed it. They're working on it. They understand that has been a bugaboo, but they like a lot of what he does back there. So he's going to stay back there, and Smith Morset is also back on returns too. So, and he's got some pelts on his belt in terms of being a return guy in the NFL. So that's my explanation for you on that part of it. Do you want to handle the play calling part, or do you want me to say something on that?
Go for it.
All right. Brian Dable made it very clear earlier when he was finally asked at the beginning of camp if you were going to call the plays, and he said absolutely, and he loves doing it. He'd been doing it for almost his whole coaching career, except when the 2 years he was here to begin his Giants tenure when Mike Kafka was calling the plays. Brian was brought here as an offensive mind, as a guy who put forth a resume that said, you're going to do great things for this team on offense. Now, I know that the results have not been there, but Brian is the head coach. He has a right to do it for sure. I've always been of the belief that, a head coach would be better off not calling the plays. But that's a general philosophy that I've had forever. And I've made that very clear on all of these programs for going back to when we started. But I understand that there are, at least a dozen coaches in this league that do call their plays. And some of them, like Andy Reid, have won championships.
Oh, yeah.
So it's not one or the other. It's simply a matter of what do you prefer, because teams have been successful under both systems. So to be frank, I'm going to take a page out of Matt's book here for a second and say Brian Dable knows more about offense and creating offensive playbooks than any of us in this building put together. So do I trust and believe in his offensive mind? God knows he was the basis for constructing the playbook that allowed the Giants to be a playoff team in 2022. So I don't have any questions about his ability. And I think that a lot of stuff has gone wrong with the Giants season in each of the last 2 years, of which was circumstantial, related to injuries, and quite frankly, not necessarily, on offensive philosophy, so to speak. That's about the best answer I can give you. If you have something else to add, please.
Nope. I feel like my answer to the last caller about the coaches and their decisions, same goes for here. They have forgotten more in the last 5 minutes than I will ever know. I'm not going to sit up here and question their, anyone's play calling or anything like that, because they just know way more about football than I ever will. So who am I to judge?
Fair enough. 201-939-4513 is our phone number here on Big Blue Kickoff Live. Jeff, do appreciate the phone call. We got a little bit of time left, so we can take another phone call or two if somebody else wants to get in. Let's talk a bit about the Saints.
Yep.
Okay, Matt? There is no question that because of the injuries that they've had in the passing game on offense, that Derek Carr, despite a relatively productive stat line, is not doing as well as the people in New Orleans had hoped when they got him from the Raiders. That, I think, is a very fair statement. But let's not forget something. He is a quality quarterback who can still beat you on any given Sunday. And when you have a guy like Alvin Kamara behind you, who's their leading receiver, he's on the verge. He's only a little over 100 yards away from his first ever 1,000-yard rushing season. Okay? You cannot sleep on the Saints because Carr can beat you and Kamara can beat you.
Yeah, I mean, I briefly touched on before that the Saints rank inside the top 10 in rushing attempts, rushing yards, rushing touchdowns, and yards per attempt. So this is a team that is looking to run the football, to establish the run. They're going to do it early. They're going to do it the entire game. The loss of Taysom Hill, that is a tough blow for the Saints offense. But quite frankly, all I think that means is that Alvin Kamara is going to get even more touches because Taysom Hill, one of the biggest roles he had was when the Saints got, close to the goal line. He sort of was their goal line back. Alvin Kamara has proven over the years he is more than capable of handling goal line duties. So while that, losing Taysom Hill definitely hurts them a bit, I don't think it's going to affect their offense too much, at least. And the one other player, which I know I mentioned on yesterday's show with John, that the Giants have to keep a close eye on Sunday, is Marquez Valdes-Scantling. Now, he's only been with the Saints for 4 games.
Mm-hmm.
That first game against the Panthers did not do much. 1 catch for 5 yards. But in the last 3 games, he has 4 touchdowns.
8 catches.
That's
it.
4 touchdowns on 8 catches.
And I believe 3 have gone for over 50 yards.
Yes. So, or
he could sting you.
Sorry, 2 of them. 2 of them. I have a 67-yard touchdown.
Yeah.
A 71-yard touchdown.
Yes.
Last week was a 28-yard touchdown.
He also has a 50-yard bomb that didn't go for a score, though. He's had 3 catches of 50 yards or more. Is what I have.
Oh, all right.
But the point is,
point is
he can get deep.
Point is, if you don't keep a close eye on him, he can burn you deep. And this goes for any defense across the NFL. And I mentioned this stat yesterday. Don't have to rehash it, but the Giants have struggled when it comes to the deep ball. When it comes to passes 20-plus yards down the field, the Giants have allowed the highest completion percentage in the NFL by a pretty wide margin. If there's anyone that is going to beat you deep on the Saints team, it is Marquez Valdes-Scantling. So while stopping Alvin Kamara, or at least slowing him down, 100% has to be the defense's top priority, especially given all the injuries the Giants have on their front 7. Keying in on Kamara definitely has to be priority number 1. But in my eyes, a very close priority number 2 is keeping an eye on MVS, because if you don't watch him closely, he's going to do that go route and just get behind your defense. And if Carr puts it anywhere near his vicinity, that's going to be a 50, 60, 70-yard touchdown.
Carr has gone 4 straight games without an interception and has only thrown 4 on the season. So for a Giants team that has only 1 pick this year, you probably are pretty pessimistic about your chances of picking off Carr on Sunday. He just doesn't throw picks. And, I was talking to some of the Saints radio pre- and post-game guys just yesterday, as a matter of fact. And I said, fellas, I don't understand. I've always been a huge Derek Carr fan forever, since he came out of school. And I don't understand the dissatisfaction with him. And you know what they said to me? Well, we don't get it either. To be honest, I think that everybody wants the shiny new quarterback toy that has these great legs. And Derek Carr is a pocket passer. That's it. It's just that simple. He's a pocket passer. He's not going to do a bunch of incredibly, difficult highlight plays with his legs. He's just a pocket passer. And he doesn't have some of his greatest and most dangerous weapons at his disposal. So what is there to sink your teeth into? And that's what it comes down to. He's a victim of circumstance more than anything else, because his stat line is very productive.
Yeah. Look, he's not been putting up MVP numbers, but he has been as you said, just a productive quarterback. He gets the job done.
He's really good.
And, while he is very much a pocket passer, he's not that dual threat quarterback that so many guys across the league are now. He's only taken 7 sacks this year. As a guy that, as you said, does not leave the pocket often. In 9 games, he's been sacked 7 times. He has not been sacked more than once in any game that he has played in this year. And on the flip side, Spencer Rattler, who did have a 3-game stretch where he was starting due to Carr injured, 3 games, Spencer Rattler was sacked 14 times compared to 7 sacks in 9 games for Derek Carr. And Spencer Rattler is a lot more mobile than Derek Carr. So Derek Carr, while he might not be the perfect quarterback, he knows how to play the position. He's a professional quarterback. He's efficient. He gets the ball where it needs to be. He's got a completion percentage over 68%, and he's just not going to take too many sacks, which is not exactly the greatest stat you want to hear for a Giants team that the last 4 games has struggled to get after the quarterback after such a strong start. in rushing the passer and now has to play without Dexter Lawrence.
And there's nothing that he hasn't seen. He's been around this league for a good part of a decade. He's seen it all.
Yes, he is
you're not
one of the
fool him.
older starting quarterbacks.
Was
in
he
the
33?
NFL. 33, yes.
I mean, look, I said it last year. Jets should have gone after Derek Carr.
Well, didn't they try?
They kind of gave him. It was a token look, and we're going to be all in on Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah.
They got the wrong quarterback. If they had Derek Carr, they might be in a lot better shape than they are today. But they got the wrong guy. Anyway, so be it. One item on defense, actually 2 items on defense when you talk about the Saints. We have nobody on hold, right, Pearson? Okay, just want to make sure. 2 items on defense. Demario Davis, 7 consecutive years of a minimum of 100 tackles. He has been first or second team All-Pro in each of the last 5 years. That guy has just been one of the more underrated, productive inside linebackers in the NFL for a long time. 2-time Jet, by the way. Spent a year with Cleveland in the middle there and then came to New Orleans. He's been with the New Orleans Saints for about 5 or 6 years now. He just doesn't get the ink. But the guy has the respect of everybody around the league. So, if Tyrone Tracy is going to have himself a game, because the Giants have, again, backups playing on the offensive line, he's going to have to avoid Demario Davis. The other guy you want to worry about is Brian Bresee, who first-round pick out of Clemson last year, 4.5 sacks as a rookie. He comes in passing situations. He's actually played 61% of the snaps so far this season. And next to Dexter Lawrence, he is second in the NFL amongst defensive tackles with 6.5 sacks this year. He is a good player, a budding star at the position in this league. He doesn't get enough play, I think, and probably because last year as a rookie, he didn't do as much, he didn't play as much, and didn't have big numbers. But when you talk about the next generation of defensive tackles in this league, Brian Bresee is one of those guys you're going to hear from.
Yeah, I feel like when it comes to interior defensive linemen, you either need to have like an insane season in order to gain recognition really from, the country, from the national media, or have very good production for, however many years in a row before you this was prior to getting injured. Dexter Lawrence was in the midst of his likely would have been third Pro Bowl season.
Yes.
And he this season was just finally starting to get the recognition from the national media that he's deserved to get for 3 years now. So I'm with you. Brian Bresee, very talented young defensive lineman. And I will say he's probably their best defensive lineman, but they do have some talented players on the edge as well. Cameron Jordan, who's been around the league forever, definitely towards the end of his career, but still not a guy you can overlook. He can, if you put him in single coverage and don't really keep an eye on him, he's gonna make you pay. And in addition to Cam Jordan, Chase Young, who has sort of bounced around, maybe hasn't lived up to quite the expectations that people had for him when he was the number 2 pick back in, 2020? Yeah, the year the Giants got Andrew Thomas.
Mm-hmm.
But he is quietly having one of his most productive seasons as a pass rusher. I think I mentioned this, I believe, yesterday, but he has a career-high 15.8% pressure rate this season. And this is in a reserve role, so they're not using him every down, sort of coming in on passing situations. But when he's out there, he's getting after the quarterback and doing a good job of it. So, and he's also lined up almost primarily on the right side, which would be against the left tackle, which just puts the importance of, hopefully getting Jermaine Illuminor out there. It increases the importance because, as I've said, Jermaine Illuminor right now is the Giants' best healthy tackle. So you want your best players out there to go up against their best players. No disrespect to the backups, but obviously you want Jermaine Illuminor out there if he's healthy enough to play.
We should mention to folks that yesterday Brian Dable said, and this should not be a surprise to you, next up on the depth chart, without Illuminor, O'Neal looks like, again, we think based on Coach Priscilla's comments, he's probably pointed up, but the next 2 tackles on the list are Azudu and Hubbard.
Yeah, with Hubbard on the left side.
We would
Zudu
assume.
on the right.
We would assume. We don't know for sure because Brian Dable wouldn't say when he was asked who would be on the left, who would be on the right. He would not say. We would assume Hubbard would be on the left.
Yeah, based also off of, again, this is unofficial depth chart that gets released each week, but this week's unofficial depth chart had Hubbard as the backup left tackle and Zudu as the backup right tackle.
Put together by the PR staff.
Yes, again,
unofficial.
Emphasis on unofficial.
Correct.
One other stat to bring up, just going back to the Saints offense for a second, just because I was talking about Derek Carr throwing the deep ball. Derek Carr has thrown a deep pass at the 6th highest rate in the NFL this season, 12.5%. He has had an attempt 20 or more air yards. So, again, towards that MVS little rant I went on before, you need to keep a close eye on him. And in terms of Derek Carr and those sack numbers I mentioned, Derek Carr has released the ball 0.45 seconds after being pressured on average this season, which is the 3rd quickest release rate in the NFL. So as soon as he feels pressure, he's getting rid of the football, whether it's dumping it off to his check down, whether it's just throwing the ball away. He's not going to sit back there and just let you run at him and, sack him. He's going to try to get rid of the football.
Hence the low sack number.
Yes.
And folks, by the way, you recall just a few weeks ago, the Giants had run off a huge, long, consecutive week streak of being the leading sack artists in the NFL. Now they're down to 6th. They have really been on a drought over the last few weeks.
I think it's 1 sack in the last 4 games.
Yeah.
After they had a wide margin over the rest of the league in the sack numbers.
Believe it or not, Dexter Lawrence won his last 5 games without a sack before he got hurt.
Now, he was getting pressures. They were not resulting in sacks.
Yeah. I mean, now, does that mean teams had started to figure it out? Well, to some degree, it means they were running the ball really well. So they didn't have to throw it as much.
Yes, the pass.
Or throw it in those type of desperate situations.
Yeah, I mean, look, we had seen the pass attempt number by opponents drop in recent weeks just because they've had so much success running the ball. They haven't had to throw the ball that much. And the Giants have been the ones playing from behind, which obviously if you're playing with a lead in the second half, you're going to run the ball more than you're going to throw it. Obviously, common sense. So
that'll do it for the show, folks. Appreciate you listening and being a part of the program. Again, it's every single weekday live, 12:30 p.m. Eastern Time on Giants.com and the Giants mobile app. Always get the archive of the show on your podcast platforms everywhere and the Giants mobile app. Coverage of this team continues. 11 o'clock, WFAN Giants pregame show, 1 o'clock kickoff, MSG postgame for 1 hour immediately following the game, and at the same time, 2 hours after the game is the WFAN Giants radio postgame show. Matt, that'll do it. Let's hope we don't freeze our butts off Sunday.
I will be warm in the press box, so I'm not worried about myself. I hope you stay warm.
I don't go downstairs till the fourth quarter. But in any event, Pearson, you're going to be on the field the whole game, aren't you?
Pearson, you better layer up.
Folks, warm wishes. And if you have some old blankets you want to send to Pearson that he might be able to use on the sideline, we certainly will take them. For Matt Citak, I'm Paul Dottino. We'll see you next time on Big Blue Kickoff Live, presented by Cadillac, the official luxury vehicle of the New York Football Giants. So long, everybody.